We welcome you to another Sunday School lesson. Sunday School is a blessing and gift from God. Revelation 21:9-27 presents a description of the New Jerusalem, the eternal, final heavenly city. It's a city that is beautiful inside and out, and the source of such eternal beauty and sinless existence is found in Jesus Christ, who will dwell there with us forever. This lesson gives us a glimpse into the beauty as well as the safety of the New Jerusalem, as John saw it from a vantage mountaintop view. This lesson begins with verse 10, which says, "And he carried me away in the Spirit to a mountain great and high, and showed me the holy city, Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God." John reports in this verse that the angel carried him away to a high mountain, where he saw the holy city of Jerusalem descending from heaven, from God. John was in the Spirit when this occurred. In this case, the vantage point of a high mountain would give John the proverbial bird's eye view of that great city, the holy Jerusalem, descending out of heaven from God. The city is also described as holy, which speaks of the purity of the city. The city descended, but the Bible never says it landed on the new earth, suggesting that it hovered above the earth. John goes on to say in verse 11, "It shone with the glory of God, and its brilliance was like that of a very precious jewel, like a jasper, clear as crystal." The New Jerusalem is not a drab, dull, boring city, because it radiates God's glory. It is bright and beautiful like a rare jewel that shines brilliantly. Perhaps the word jasper describes a quartz with shades of green, blue, and red. The precious stone jasper is opaque, dull, not clear, but in the New Jerusalem, it will be transparent or clear like crystal. John probably used the closest term he could think of to describe the beauty of the light. Continuing his description of the city, John went on to say in verse 12, "It had a great, high wall with 12 gates and with 12 angels at the gates. On the gates were written the names of the 12 tribes of Israel." The New Jerusalem is secure. Nothing and no one except what is righteous is allowed to enter. A massive high wall with 12 gates surrounds the city. 12 angels guard the gates. In eternity, there won't be any evil, danger, or harm from which to be protected. The existence of these walls and gates serve as real, but symbolic emblems proclaiming the safety and security of those living in New Jerusalem. The gates serve not only to symbolize security, but they also serve as memorials. The names of the 12 tribes of Israel are inscribed on the gates, to indicate the importance of Israel in God's eternal plan of redemption. This distinctive identification of Israel will live on throughout eternity. Still describing the city in verse 13, John said, "There were 3 gates on the east, 3 on the north, 3 on the south and 3 on the west." In the New Jerusalem, God placed 12 gates in an orderly pattern. 3 gates were located on the city's east side, 3 on the north side, 3 on the south side, and 3 on the west side. Most likely the arrangement of the gates follows the arrangement of Israel's encampment in the desert: on the east, Judah, Issachar, and Zebulun; on the south, Reuben, Simeon, and Gad; on the west, Ephraim, Manasseh, and Benjamin; on the north, Dan, Asher, and Naphtali. Numbers 2. We are not told here, but according to Revelation 21:21, the 3 gates on each side of the city were made of pearls. Verse 14 says, "The wall of the city had 12 foundations, and on them were the names of the 12 apostles of the Lamb." The wall of the New Jerusalem has 12 foundations, or separate gigantic stones, on which the names of the 12 apostles are inscribed. The inscriptions are appropriate, because the church is built on the foundation of the apostles and prophets, Christ Jesus himself being the cornerstone, Ephesians 2:20. The fact that the New Jerusalem displays both the names of the 12 tribes of Israel, and the names of the 12 apostles shows that, first, God distinguishes between Israel and the church, and second, both Old Testament believers and New Testament believers occupy New Jerusalem. Most likely, the 12 names here correspond to the original 12 apostles as established after the ascension of Jesus: Peter, John, James, Andrew, Philip, Thomas, Bartholomew, Matthew, James son of Alphaeus, Simon, Judah son of James, and Matthias. Israel and the church will be memorialized forever in the holy city, and saints of all ages will dwell there. Verse 15 says, "The angel who talked with me had a measuring rod of gold to measure the city, its gates, and its walls." The angel who spoke to the Apostle John had a measuring rod with which to measure the city, its gates, and walls, to shows that New Jerusalem is real, not a mystical city. If it were a purely symbolic, it would be impossible to measure it. Apparently, God, who designed and built the city, Hebrews 11:10, wanted John and us to realize the city is big enough to accommodate the saints of all periods of history. The angel's measuring rod is not simply a staff like the one mentioned in Revelation 11:1, it is a rod of gold. Everything about New Jerusalem is glorious, including the rod the angel used to measure the city. Verse 16 says, "The city was laid out like a square, as long as it was wide." He measured the city with the rod and found it to be 12,000 stadia in length, and as wide and high as it is long. The city is laid out like foursquare, or like a perfect giant cube. The whole city is architecturally perfect, and has become the most intimate dwelling place of God. The city, when translated into modern measurements, is almost 1,400 miles long, 1,400 miles wide, and 1,400 miles high. That would make the size of the city close to 2 billion square miles. Certainly such a large city defies both logic and imagination, but most of the things God does often goes against logic and imagination. Verse 17 says, "The angel measured the wall using human measurement, and it was 144 cubits thick." The angel also measured the wall that surrounds New Jerusalem. Although an angel measured the wall, he used human measurements. The city's wall is 144 cubits thick, which is about 216 feet or almost 66 meters. Generally, a wall is constructed to provide security and/or privacy. But most walls are only a foot, 30 centimeters, or less thick. The massive size of these walls not only implies strength, it suggests the enormous scale of the rest of the city. The huge cubical city, the New Jerusalem, has more than enough room for the 144,000 from Israel, and even for a crowd without number from all nations. Verse 18 says, "The wall was made of jasper, and the city of pure gold, as pure as glass." John observed that the wall of New Jerusalem is constructed of translucent jasper, which glow with brilliant color. Thus the city glows with brilliant light, both dazzling red and shiny gold. Because God is glorious, the city reflects His glory. Earlier, John saw a vision of God on His throne and wrote that He had the appearance of jasper and carnelian, which is very similar to ruby. A rainbow circled His throne. This description portrays God and His throne as glorious, so we should not be surprised that the city He designs and builds is arrayed with brilliant colors. John said that the entire city of New Jerusalem was made of gold. John also compared the purity of the gold to clear glass which has no blemishes whatsoever. Verse 19 says, "The foundations of the city walls were decorated with every kind of precious stone. The first foundation was jasper, the second sapphire, the third agate, the fourth emerald." Now John turns to the foundations of the wall of the city and describes it as being decorated with all kinds of precious stones. John tells us that each foundation was made of a precious stone, and 4 of those stones are listed in this verse and the remaining 8 are listed in the next verse. This list of precious stones shows the beauty and magnificence of the city and the way it reflects the beauty of God, who fills it with His glory. Verse 20 says, "The 5th onyx, the 6th ruby, the 7th chrysolite, the 8th beryl, the 9th topaz, the 10th turquoise, the 11th jacinth, and the 12th amethyst." John continues to list the precious stones that the remaining 8 foundations were made of. This list of 12 precious stone is also similar to the list of the 12 precious stones placed in Aaron's breastplate. It appears that those precious stones that were once reserved for the high priest now belong to the entire city of the New Jerusalem. Our final verse says, "The 12 gates were 12 pearls, each gate made of a single pearl. The great street of the city was of gold, as pure as transparent glass." Each of the 12 gates in New Jerusalem appears to be made of a single pearl. In ancient times, pearls ranked as extremely valuable and rare gems. Finally, John described the street of the city. He said that it was pure gold just like the city itself, and likewise stated that the gold from which the street was like transparent glass, for it had no blemishes whatsoever. But we won't know for sure until we walk through the city ourselves. All of these descriptions and varied expressions of the New Jerusalem make the point that the city shines through and through with the glory and purity of God, who made it and adorned it as the place for God and humans to dwell together, in a brand new world. A new city. Many of God's plans for eternity are not hidden from His followers. He plans to make everything new. The old order will be destroyed by fire and a new order will become a reality. In this lesson, the Apostle John saw the heavenly city, New Jerusalem, in a vision which depicted a concrete reality. God, Father and Son, will be the source of light in the New Jerusalem. The very presence of God will dominate and illuminate our eternal home. Although all of our questions about the eternal state are not fully answered in Scripture, one can see that our eternal home will be a glorious place where God dwells with His followers in fellowship and intimacy. Will you be there? The choice is yours. A new city. 1. The New Jerusalem will come down from heaven, Revelation 21:10-11. This confirms that this is another gift from the Almighty. 2. The 12 gates of the New Jerusalem with the names of the 12 tribes engraved on them show that the redeemed from all the tribes of Israel will enter the new holy city, Revelation 21:12-13. 12 is a symbolic number, indicating the chosen tribes, and suggests that one enters the city through the power of being chosen. 3. The wall of the New Jerusalem has 12 foundations with the names of the 12 apostles written in them, representing redeemed believers from the church age, Revelation 21:14. New Testament believers will also occupy New Jerusalem. 4. As with everything God makes, His handiwork for the New Jerusalem was perfectly laid out, Revelation 21:15-17. New Jerusalem follows the plan of God, its master builder. 5. Because He will dwell there, God used the best and most precious stones to decorate the new city, Revelation 21:18-21. John's description portrays God and His throne in New Jerusalem as glorious, so we should not be surprised that the city He designs and builds is arrayed with brilliant colors. We are truly glad you spent time to learn this lesson with us. We hope you are blessed and may share these with somebody else. Thank you very much, have a great week, and God bless you always, dear brothers and sisters.